I think you're going to see some very interesting things here today, and we've got Alex Geller from Solver, who is, gosh, Alex, are you Vice President of Sales? I guess that's what I've always told people, and I guess I should validate that with you. But yeah, I'm going to turn the reins over to Alex now. What we'd like to do is we'll hold questions until the last portion of the presentation, and we'll open it up to a sort of a round robin exchange. So please hold your questions till then. But for now, Alex, please take over.
Sounds good. Thanks, Craig, and thank you everyone for joining today. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. If you do have questions, please type them into the polls, which should be on your GoToMeeting, and at the end we'll read through them and address each one. What today is really all about, it's going to be twofold. One is helping you understand the analytics landscape and making it easier for you to understand what's the marketing noise and what's the actual stuff that you need to be paying attention to. And then second is going to be an illustration of our product and where it fits within that ecosystem. Really, the reason this webinar started is I understand it's really daunting for a lot of managers to understand what are these various terms: core performance management, business intelligence. And I found myself, after going to several conferences, constantly drawing diagrams to explain the environments to frustrated executives. So what this really will do, it's going to attempt to simplify the architecture and explain how all of the components fit together to support the managerial decisions. So that being said, the agenda for today, we'll start off and just going to enough of these conferences and seeing how both larger enterprises and mid-sized companies implement analytics. I'll go through kind of the primary pillars of what I think are going to be the very important drivers over the next few years. Then we'll look at the data architecture, and this is really going to be the architecture necessary to combine structured and unstructured data. And next, the business managers and the executives in the room are probably wondering, what's the purpose of all of it? So we'll kind of illustrate it into three categories. Then we'll look at specifically the BI and CPM market. We'll illustrate where the visualization products are and which other companies that Solver competes with in the marketplace. And then, spend the rest of the second part is showing you a high-level version of the product. So that being said, I do want to keep this interactive towards the end. So if you have any questions, like I said, type it into the polls, and I'll make sure to address them later. First is, what are the trends? And while there are many, because the total addressable market is just continuing to grow, in our example, we'll define analytics as putting together any data to make better decisions. To make those better decisions, you actually need secure data with access, so the right people have access to it. And that's this trend of self-service with IT support. The way I look at it is Tableau and a few of these companies came out and said, everyone wants data. Get it to all of the managers. And that's great for the larger enterprises that have data warehouses, teams, that have integration teams. But what about the mid-sized companies? And I think what happened was a lot of those vendors started selling directly into business units, and they kind of bypassed IT because they were typically a barrier to entry to getting information. And unfortunately, the security and the control that is necessary for IT sort of got lost in this process. So what I think you'll see as a trend over the next few years is really evaluating these tools along with IT support because you do need that data transformed and secured for access. The second trend here is app exchanges with cloud. Really, cloud is just a marketing term, right? It's effectively just infrastructure that's, now you don't purchase a server, but someone else owns it. But it means much more. What it means, aside from just infrastructure, is that there's going to be a lot more connectivity. So various apps are going to be connected, and instead of having to worry about integrating all of them, you'll be able to go to an app exchange and access your favorite ISVs and your favorite products. So a lot of the major vendors right now are competing for market share here. Salesforce was really the company that said, let's build a platform so other companies can just post their products and they're all integrate seamlessly. Microsoft is following, Amazon with AWS, and hopefully the end goal of these app exchanges is to make things more simple for you. So think about the consumer space. I mean, you really just have two major app exchanges where you can download any app and you can with Uber get from point A to point B. I think during the next few years, the enterprise space is also going to consolidate and become easier to navigate through. Next, and this hits close to heart for me specifically because we're a self-funded company, but it's vendor liquidity. With all of these companies, because they're SaaS, which means you lease the software, they have to raise capital. And with raising capital, there's only two ways to have a liquidity event. You either go public or you get bought out. And I think what you'll see over the next few years, a lot of these companies are going to start IPOing. And from your perspective, what that means is the team that you signed up for and the support groups that you might be completely different once the company gets public or bought out. So my advice to you is when you're evaluating vendors, just think about their liquidity structure and who they can possibly be bought out, because that is going to impact both the technology stack that you're going to be using, as well as things such as support, consulting, and so on. And typically, once the larger companies either go public or get bought out, the culture changes and a lot of people start leaving also. And then the last trend, which is really important, is the citizen data scientist. This is a role that's starting to grow. Right now, it's mostly larger size companies have positions for them, but this is really someone that has a statistical background, has enough of a technical background, but also has the business acumen to actually make sense of all of the data and architecture, and feed it into senior managers so that data makes tangible sense. These aren't necessarily the data scientists that have their PhD in mathematics. Those are more kind of the middle ground, the people that understand enough, but at the same time, they do have some business context to make it relatable to the company. Now, how are all of these trends enabled? And here is kind of my version of the architecture. And while this is very simplified, it's really meant for you to start kind of thinking about how your company should position all the components, to enable analytics. If you follow my cursor, and what this is here is Internet of Things data, social data, so maybe Facebook, Twitter. Here's where again your devices are. So more devices now have internet connectivity than ever before, and it's only exponentially growing. And all of that produces data. Now, this data, a lot of companies don't really know what to do with it, but they know they need to capture it. And the advent of a data lake, really came out because vendors said, hey, let's make it easier to store all this data, and then we'll figure out what to do with it. And you'll see companies such as Hadoop, Spark. Those are all technologies that enable effectively the cheap storage of all data, both structured, which is the typical data that comes out of your systems, and unstructured data, which is things such as free text, noises, maybe image scans, and so on. All of this is stored in a data lake, and the companies that can afford data scientists, they have those data scientists go in here and use tools such as SAS, R, or Python. Those are pretty technical programming languages, and the data scientists use them to create statistical relevance. So an example could be Say you sell into consumers, and you're like a company like Nike that sells shoes. Well, Nike's actually creating most of their tools now, their shoes with sensors. That sensor data is stored in a data lake. Then they also have various platforms for social. So people tweet about a new shoe that came out, people post it on Facebook, people Snapchat. That's all really valuable data that they want stored because they want to know exactly this is a consumer that's going to buy at this time, and we need to really tell them when the sole of their shoe is running out, which this Internet of Things data, the sensor, is going to tell Nike. So they capture that data, and they have these guys, data scientists, putting all of it together for relevancy. Now, in my experience, these are really kind of larger companies that are starting to do this, but this is effectively extremely important because that's really going to start telling companies, what products to pursue, and it's going to help companies innovate because data in itself is becoming more and more of an asset. Then you kind of have the more traditional folks saying, all right, well, we don't have this yet. Maybe we do some light analysis, but how am I going to store all of that for trend analysis? And that's where a data warehouse is still very important to combining that unstructured data into a more structured environment. And the structured environment entails your transactional data sources. So here it could be your ERP system, your CRM, your payroll. All those transactional data sources can be loaded into our data warehouse. And mostly, the way to get from point A in these guys to point B, that's called an ETL, extract, transform, load. Way to push data in here. And after that data is pushed in and cleansed, you can combine that with some of the statistical analysis that are drawn up from the data scientists sitting over here. All that data is stored, and then on top of it, companies with a lot of different departments with strict security settings, they also have data marts specific for each business unit set on top of this data warehouse. And this could be a finance data mart, sales, and so on. And once this structure is organized, and I realize that they're mostly management and finance and accounting folks on this call, but the reason it's important for you to know this is this really needs to be in place from a framework perspective before you can leverage the CPM and BI tools. And this is sort of the unsexy part of data management, but very necessary in order to actually get the correct results and make the most use of those front-end tools. This webinar is specific to Dynamics, and Microsoft sat back at this, and there were a lot of innovations happening in this space by mostly companies in Silicon Valley, and they said, all right, well, we really need an answer. We need to figure out a way we can take our own customer base and provide a way they can do predictive analytics. And this is my take on Microsoft's structure. And a lot more of this is kind of marketing. Their technology is behind the actual architectural framework here, but I do think this is their vision effectively. And what I'm going to try to do is kind of tie it into a similar framework as what you saw in the last slide. And over here, with the Microsoft ecosystem, they own LinkedIn. Right? They own a lot of Internet of Things and a lot of environments to capture social data. And they process that in their event hub. And you kind of think of that as a data lake. And then after they're done, they load, instead of a data warehouse, you can load into a common data service that Microsoft provides. Now, after the common data service is set up, you can use PowerBi.com directly on top of that. And for a lot of folks, I kind of go around and go to these various conferences, and they say, I use PowerBi.com, and I really can't seem to get it to work like it does during the demonstrations. And that's because in order to effectively use this, you still need to transform the data. And their way of transforming it is taking the data from D365, CRM, SQL, and loading it into their entity store. And this is making sense of the data. Then pushing it back in here into this common data service. And that way, you can effectively use PowerBi.com to visualize both structured and unstructured data. And then over here is Management Reporter, which is really just a formatted reporting tool. Microsoft, for the on-premise stuff, they're discontinuing development on the tool. And even for their D365 cloud, they haven't really made clear what they're going to do for formatted reporting. Having come back recently from their conference, clearly an area that's missing is formatted reporting and budgeting. And that's exactly where the corporate performance vendors such as ourselves come in. And over here, last thing I'll cover is all of this entity store, common data service. This is set up with in mind that all the data sources are in the Dynamics ecosystem. But a lot of companies say, actually, we have ADP as an example. Maybe we have Marketo. Point is, we have other data sources. And that's where they created this bring your own database model, which effectively is another database that you can then load into this common data service as your central version of the truth. Definitely complex in multiple steps. I think Microsoft is working to simplify it, but right now this is effectively their vision. And the reason it's their vision is because this is all going to live in Azure. And once they get once they get you in Azure, you're using LinkedIn, so they have your data, and then on top of that, they have your transactional systems, D365 and CRM. They effectively said, wow, we have a full platform and we can control the cost because we're really the only tool that has that cloud infrastructure with Azure. So that's my take of the Microsoft ecosystem. The next part, always when I show this, I have people saying, great, why is any of this important? And it's really, 4 key pillars. It's descriptive analytics, which is, hey, what's happened already? It's diagnostic, which is, why did it happen? Let's do some analysis to improve. It's predictive, so we can say, all right, well, all of this social media data is coming out, and we didn't know this, but we have a new customer. And then it's prescriptive, which is kind of the last frontier of analytics, and that says, let the system tell me what to do next. Let's take middle management decision-making, effectively kind of out of this process. And that's the more extreme example of prescriptive, but the more mild one is, things such as scorecards and alerts, things that help you run your company. Now, what I've also done in this slide, and this is a bit busy, but if I look at it, over here is I said, all right, what do mid-sized companies do? Because I deal with them. And then having gone to enough conferences, what are the larger enterprises, like the Costco's, the Home Depot's? How do they do all this? And what I found is really for the descriptive and diagnostic, a lot of mid-sized companies don't even really have true data warehouses. They might have disparate SQL views everywhere, but the reason they don't have a data warehouse is because the technology is quite expensive. And hiring integration specialists, all of that can quickly become expensive and unaffordable for many mid-sized companies. Also, they do struggle a lot with integration because of the different data sources and the vendors that sell these integration tools are pretty expensive. So getting all of this in one place is a very real struggle for mid-sized companies. Meanwhile, some of the larger companies, they do have integration specialists, but they have many more databases, which a lot of times, makes it hard to link all of that together. Then, if I skip over here on the right-hand side, the larger companies for predictive and prescriptive, they're investing a lot of money into it. The technology, is kind of coming, I think, before the actual data governance and before the security part, which is worrisome. But I do think there are a lot of vendors that are trying to change that, and they're building platforms. So not only are they saying, hey, we provide the statistical analysis and the visualizations, they're also saying, oh, we'll provide you a way just to lock all that data down. We'll provide you a way to store that data back into the data warehouse, and so on. And then, moving on here, the mid-sized companies, really, they have, the larger companies, they have many visualization products. Because they have a data structure, for them it doesn't matter. They can use Tableau, they can use Domo. All of those are true BI companies, which we'll take a look at in the next slide. They could put that on top of our warehouses and have various business users select their own favorite tool. A problem that I see, and this is actually across both enterprise and mid-size, is there's a complete disconnect between IT, the data scientists, and management. They still really haven't figured out a way to get in the room and figure out what's important for the business and make sense out of it. I think the trend with these enterprises, store data, hire data scientists, and only now are we getting into, great, like how is this data really going to help us create a new product or generate profitability and acquire more market share? And based on the architecture we looked at, the descriptive part, that's really, like I said, your data warehouses, your data marts, your operational systems feed in here. This stores history data, so you can see what has already happened, which is really what your transactional data sources store. Diagnostic, a lot of different tools here. Data exploration is a pretty popular term now. It's being able to explore this data here that's in descriptive and get your what-if analysis. A lot of dashboarding tools and reporting. These are all based on, we have history. Now let's think, what can we do to improve? Then prescriptive. Now this is terms such as data lakes, storing everything, data blend technologies. A few companies that went public recently. There's Alteryx, MuleSoft. All of those guys are with data integration and data blend, so you can combine all of the data. SAS, R, those are languages that the data scientists use. And then visualization products, right, which you can drag and drop, and those are user-friendly products. Now, prescriptive, this is really where you come in and say, all right, what should I do next? Things such as scorecards, budgeting, forecasting, data citizens are starting to make a lot more sense of what do you actually do and how do you put all of this data into context. And effectively, what you'll see here over the next few years is a lot of emphasis on AI and machine learning. AI being, automating processes by a machine, and the reason they're able to get automated is because machine learning exists, which means the machine themselves pick up information, and instead of having a computer program it, they effectively program themselves. So they can say things such as, hey, once we hit above a certain profitability, alert this person to do X, Y, Z. That's the first phase. After that person does enough of X, Y, Z and it produces a result, the machine can effectively do that task on behalf of that person. And that's what machine learning is all about. Now, taking a step back and saying, this is great, gives me somewhat of a perspective. It's interesting, but this is specifically now the subset of the market where we work in. And now, scaling back a bit and saying, all right, well, what's corporate performance management, business intelligence? Everything we looked at so far was more based on, predictive analytics, data warehousing. This is more now, what are the front-end tools used to actually soak up all that information once that infrastructure is in place? And if I look here, I broke this out into 4 quadrants. Over here on the upper right-hand corner are all the visualization products. Over here, all the CPM. So starting off, what is visualization? Visualization/business intelligence, that's typically the tools for sales and marketing to be able to do their analysis. What kind of analysis? Well, mostly sales and marketing. And these products primarily sell into sales and marketing executives and are really meant for things such as having heat maps, measuring, attrition rates. So how long is someone hovering on top of a certain website before purchasing a product? That's these tools. They do a really good job, and they're really meant for taking all the data and creating beautiful charts around it. What they don't do is they don't do formatted reporting. So things such as P&L, and you can update an account and have that automatically list. They don't do that. They don't do budgeting and forecasting, so you can't input data. And third, they don't do Excel, right? So they're not Excel-based. Why? Because they don't sell into the Office of Finance. They sell into sales and marketing. These tools, conversely, where my cursor is, they all sell specifically into the Office of Finance. And if I look over here, this Oracle's product, Hyperion, IBM, Cognos, traditional legacy core performance management system that include both reporting and budgeting. And these traditionally are very expensive, a few $100,000 for software, and probably even more in implementation. And that naturally created a market for companies such as Adaptive Insight, Host Analytics, Anaplan. And what these companies did is they said, hey, let's kill the way these guys think. And the way we're going to do that, since we're cloud-enabled, we're going to be connected to more data sources. And most importantly, we're going to be cheaper, right? We're going to be cheaper. We're going to be subscription service-based. And we are going to eliminate Excel. That's the way they thought. They raised a lot of venture capital money, and effectively, I think what they found out was that they were wrong. Users love Excel, and it's one of the things that Microsoft really hit out of the park. And that's where where BI 360 comes in, is we differentiate because we always said, let's keep Excel. People love Excel. They want to use it. However, let's make it web-enabled, and I'll show you what that means in the architecture slide. But where we kind of found a little niche in the market is we're Excel-based, like I mentioned, and we're focused specifically in the dynamic space. And we have a live integration to Dynamics, which we'll illustrate later. And then over here, Profix, just another competitor that's cube-based. And what cubes are, they're really technical, and I think the world is kind of changing from this, from cubes to relational databases. And what that means for you is just enhancement of performance, so everything's faster, and because databases like Microsoft has in memory, for example, have become faster and more agile, there's really no need to buy a cube-based tool anymore and have IT manage it. And again, all of this is, my take on it, and it's a very fragmented space, and there's a lot of players. Where BI 360 differentiates is 4 key areas. We have a data warehouse for loading other data sources. We are Excel. We have a live integration to Dynamics, and we're really the only tool on the Gartner list with those capabilities. I'll skip through this because I kind of already mentioned it, but now I'll skip and say, let's talk about Solver BI 360 as a company, our product, and showcase. Now I'm going to take a breath here and just note this is now the second part of the demonstration where I'll illustrate specifically within that core performance manager layer of Predictive, BI, all of this. What we can do for the business. And this is the very last slide that I'll spend in PowerPoint before I demonstrate the product. But this is important for you to know. So within all of that, BI 360 definitely does not deal with the predictive analytics. We don't deal with necessarily prescriptive outside of just budgeting and forecasting. We don't have big data technology tools. Those you can capture later. But we kind of look at ourselves as more of a way to structure the data that's coming from your transactional systems. So we feed more, if I look back at my architecture slide here, we feed more into this space right here. So taking all of this data, taking this data, putting it all in. If I look at here, we fit right in here. We don't deal with any of this, okay? However, once you load these technologies in a few years, you could load that into our own data warehouse, okay? So going back to the slide, here's how all this looks is from a reporting perspective, very simple. We report live off of your ERP system. And for those folks that are familiar with Management Reporter, which has been discontinued development by Microsoft, we directly replace that. We're Excel-based, and you can create your subledger reports, drill into subledger, and so on. And this is where we first started. We launched the product, very simple. Then companies said, hey, you know what? We love the way your product looks and feels from Great Plains, but we have other data sources. We have a payroll system. We have a CRM system. So this is where we created this data warehouse. For the larger companies, they use this just as a data mart specific for finance and accounting. Mid-sized companies that don't have a data warehouse, this is a fully functional, has about 57 predefined modules. And really where this is different than building your own is that it's a fast deployment. We've already built the semantic structure for you. And because of that, the deployment is typically, about a month or two. And then you're able to use the exact same Excel-based report writing tool as an enterprise-wide tool to report across your various disparate data sources. That's great, reporting, but then users said, it's not enough. There's a lot of reporting tools in the space, but why do we have to go to another tool for budgeting? And if you ask a typical Microsoft customer, they'll come and say, hey, we have Management Reporter for GL. We have SSRS for subledger. That's two. We have Forecaster for budgeting and forecasting. We obviously dump all this stuff into Excel and do analysis and spend a lot of time. And then they probably have another 3 or 4 tools from their other data sources. And before you know it, a company has about 10 tools. We come in and we'll say, well, just use us for reporting, eliminate the MR, SSRS, and your other, disparate data source report writing tools. And also, we have a budgeting component, so you're able to input data. And the point of this is all done in Excel. We're creating reports and budgeting, and then you can deploy everything via our web portal. And that's really where your power and your end users are going to live, and they're going to consume all of the data for better decisions. And what I mean by consume the data, they're going to view their charts, which specific to Office of Finance. And for most mid-sized companies, our dashboarding feature is more than enough. For those that do have that advanced structure I talked about, you can put PowerBi.com directly on top of it. We have the reporting, so you can access all your reports on the web and drill into data. And then finally, you can forecast and budget on the web. Now, I want to pause here for a sec. And I understand this is a lot of information for someone not in our space. And inherently, this is a very complex subject matter. Data is, like I'm saying, becoming the new frontier. It's an asset. That's how you should think of it. And hopefully what I did is just give you a little bit of a framework of how to set up the architecture, why it's important to set it up, kind of get your gears turning, and then say, hey, this is now maybe the first step, is implementing a tool such as BI 360 to enable me for that next frontier of analytics. Okay. All right, that being said, what I'll do is I'll start by looking at the tool from an end user perspective. Then if we have enough time, I'll actually show you a template and our ad hoc reporting tool, which is a replacement for SmartList. But what I'll do here, let's go and pretend, hey, I'm a business manager. I'm done implementing your product. How is everything going to look? And to answer that question, I'll open up Internet Explorer here, and I'll go in and go into my domain. So after going into my URL, I'm going to log in with my credentials. This is actually extremely important because a security setting that you set up in one place in BI360 is carried across all of the applications. So if I'm logging in here and I can only see a few of the departments, those are only going to be the departments I'll be able to see. And our security can get as granular as even accounts, departments, whatever is relevant for your organization. So now that I'm in here, I see all the templates, different ways to organize it. Since it's unique to my username, what I always like to do is toggle certain templates as favorites. That way I can go in here and see the ones that are really most relevant specifically to me. Now, the administrators probably say this is great, but I kind of want to structure the way people access data. Data is not really meaningful unless you can put some context around it. To help, what we've done is created folders, and you'll be able to create your own of the way your users should consume information. So in our example, maybe their strategy and goals, some of their tasks, right underneath it, a forecasting, so they can create their forecast. These budgets, full workflow, by the way, so you can see these are the people submitting the budgets. These are the people that are approving them. These are another layer of approval if you have multi-level workflow. And then right underneath it, your actual two budget templates. And then finally, some of the dashboards, right, to actually, in a chart, see how all the data looks. Well, let's go back. I'll skip this part, but really what it is we said, hey, companies, put a lot of data in PowerPoint. They put a lot of data on whiteboards. We have the ability to store data, so why not just store the gross profit or the number of customers or something like that into a database? And because we have that budgeting capability, you can do that and then measure again against these goals. What I'll do, I'll skip over to forecasting, and I'll very simply kind of illustrate the concept of having reporting and forecasting / budgeting in one place. And the way I do that, pick out my parameters. You'll see this concept consistent throughout our software, but this is really, based on your security settings, you'll get access to specific departments. I'll keep this here and say, hey, it's now, September. Click run, expand this out, and it gave me 9 months of actual and 3 months that I can forecast out to, specific for the company and department that I chose, and forecast version. Okay. I go in, I'm a solution architect, so I have numbers input here. For you, this will be blank. And now I type in my data. After I'm done, I store that data back into the database. I'm not going to do this, but what's the point of storing? Here's the point. Let's pretend you currently use Management Reporter and Excel, and it's October. What you'd have to do is copy and paste the data from Management Reporter into a spreadsheet, save as, so you have two templates. What you're doing with our software is you're going in and saying, it is now October, click a button. Actually, this is pretty useful. It says, are you sure you want to save those changes that you made? And you can always say no. And because I picked up October, it's now automatically filling up October with actual data. And you can drill into that actual data. Okay? What's the benefit? One, less errors. You're not copying and pasting anymore from Management Reporter. Two, you have one place as opposed to having two separate Excel spreadsheets. So yeah, I can save you a little bit of time, but now multiply that for all of your departments, all of your companies. And that's really when you start seeing the value of a tool like this. You'll go in and say, I just want to see finance and accounting, click a button, and now it automatically just gives you finance and accounting instead. You can toggle between the different departments here, copy and paste, and create your entire forecast. Let's go back and from the submitter's perspective, maybe you're saying this is fine, but the budgeting perspective, I'm really interested in loading other data sources. And let's just pretend you have a payroll system you work with. Here, what I'm going to do is, as a budget manager, and this would probably be just something your budget manager sees. You don't necessarily want everyone inputting assumptions. And what I'll do is I'll go in and change that 7.21, and by the way, this has travel assumptions and other things. I'll change this to 8.55. Go in here and store that data now back into the database. What's the point? I'm going to illustrate the point of storing that in just a second. But before I do, I'm showing an example for assumptions that are feeding into personnel. Absolutely, this can be used as any driver. This can be your revenue driver, your expense driver, whatever is relevant. That 8.5, FICA rate is just an example. Okay? And this is a budget manager, the department head, they don't really care about the assumptions. The only thing they want to do is go in here, open up personnel, right? Maybe select their own department. So I'll just do finance and accounting and click a button and input everything in yellow. The way we create these templates, and I'm going to emphasize this a few times, these are all just samples. You'll be able to create your own. And the creation of all of this happens in Excel with our add-in. So everything's connected to a database. Here you have the full-time, part-time employees. Right underneath here you have the general ledger. And maybe I want to go in here and Aubrey's going to get a promotion to senior accountant. And that's going to happen in let's say March of next year. You can change the hours. Maybe change the salary here, and we'll say, great, if that happens, Aubrey's going to do well. We're anticipating giving her a 10% increase in November. We'll say, yeah, eligible for benefits. Then we can also, by the way, scroll down here. And if we want to hire a new part-time accountant, I'll go and say it's going to happen in February. This is the hours. And it's a to be hired number 1. Okay. I'm inputting everything in yellow, and everything else is calculated on your behalf without you having to do anything in Excel. Now, Aubrey's salary got calculated. You see the zeros here because it didn't start work in January or February. We see it start in March, right? We see a little increase here. And if I continue scrolling through for the taxes and benefits, right? Notice how it now uses 8.55 as the FICA rate. Why? Well, that's because previously your budget manager pushed that in. So you're not using links in Excel that might break. You're now storing into a database and you're retrieving. Very important concept. And as I continue scrolling through, we have the FICA, FUTA, SUTA, workers' comp, benefits, and headcount. A lot of companies said this is great, but I actually, have more of a top-down approach where not only finance and accounting, I also want to store data for HR and administration. Click OK and click a button. I'm not going to save changes here, just a test database. And now when I expand this out, I can see it gave me data for admin, full and part-time I can store. It's going to store down to the general ledger. Finance and accounting, full and part-time, gets stored down to the general ledger. And HR, full and part-time, and stores down to the general ledger. I'll go back and maybe just show you one final template. Oh, losing internet here. Sorry about that. What I'll do is I'll go back and say, hey, last template, and then we'll get a little more into the reporting side of it. And a lot of this, by the way, operational templates you can absolutely do. The rule of thumb is anything you currently do for your budgeting in Excel, you can leverage our tool and replicate. What I'll do is skip through and say for other expenses, what do we want to store? Here we get a company, department, we pick out all these parameters, expand it out. By the way, this is just stored because demo database. For you, be blank, your operational expenses for next year. Over on the right-hand side, we go in and we have 9 months of actual, 3 months of forecast. And by the way, guess where that forecast is coming from? That forecast is coming from the very first template that I showed to you. Okay. And then if I scroll down here, same thing with salaries, right? All my full-time employees from sales and marketing are getting pushed down here in order to see the total expenses that you budget. And you can compare them to last year here too. All right, why am I showing you this template? Yes, you could type data into cells and store, kind of already showed that. But another thing you can do here, maybe for conference and seminars, what you want to do specifically is have your users, right-click and add line item details. So for conference and seminars, which exactly do we go to? So you can go back here and say, great, I went to RG Connect on May 11th, and then you could go and say, great, this is how much money we spent on it. Then we're also, we saw Solver at the RG Connect conference, we really liked it, so we're going to go to their conference. So Solver. And all of those are going to feed right into conference and seminars. Okay. Also, you can add comments here. So right-click and you can say, Dan is traveling to Seattle. Okay. And the point of doing this now is your user can just go in, click, and see any line item details. And finally, if you don't want that granular of information, maybe other office supplies, all you want to do is just query the history of that account. And by the way, there's many other spreading mechanisms, as you can see. Click apply. It now spreads it out based on seasonality. You increase it by 8%. Click this button. And now you see all of the months adjust accordingly. Click OK and store that data back. And by the way, the button that's grayed out here is this check mark. What that is workflow. If you did, say, great, I'm done, check, it notifies the admin user that someone's done and creates a workflow. So here you have the users, right? Here you have the templates. You can set start end date, and you can see, personnel is up for approval. Because they submitted it, right? They click this check mark. After you approve them, it closes out the template. And here you can see demo user 5, capital expenses, it actually is up for approval. When they approve it, it closes it out. Also, this hidden, important, not everyone can see templates, which makes it easier for them. They don't have to go through templates that aren't assigned to them, and it also manages security. What is very beneficial with our tool, and unfortunately when I showed you the unstructured environment, to really get there you are going to have to take a lot of different tools and pay people to integrate. That's just where that market is right now. Where I think we're innovators in our market is we said, hey, for the reporting and budgeting stuff, let's put all this into one place. So we will have one solution, and that's our huge benefit, right? Right underneath it, if you want to view the actual to budget report to see how you're actually doing, compared to the budget that you just input, you can pull up a report here. Notice how I'm not leaving anywhere. I pick my parameters, which is everything driven off of it, and now I get actuals, budget, and forecast, and so on, okay, that I can analyze. Last step here is I have my dashboards mixed in with my reports. If I scroll through this, a few just regular charts, dashboards, and continue scrolling through, we have the formatted reports. So here's your P&L, your balance sheet, right? Cash flow. Clearly, we'll replace MR and your other data sources as well. And what we've done here, we actually took data from Google Analytics and loaded that into our data warehouse and enabled analysis here. Now let's just open up a template. I saw on the registration list a lot of finance accounting teams. So, here I'll expand this out. We ran for corporate US. For you, this could be any department, division that's relevant, and it ran for the month of October. We have the revenues, we have the expenses. I won't have time today to build a report, but just note that when you add a new account, it automatically appears here. Okay? You can drill into all this data. Okay? We have mobile apps both in Google Play and in the Apple Store, and you can scan it. There's links. What I'll do here is I'll actually push this right back into Excel. So we'll say testing, maybe ABC, click save. You can see that the download was completed, and that's advantageous because now what I can do is go in here, open up this P&L testing, and it is now just regular Excel. So here for product revenue, maybe I know it's going to increase to 950,000. Click, and I can see all the data here change as well, right? Because all of these are just regular Excel formulas. And the ease of use is something we pride ourselves on, and creating these templates is non-technical and easy to create. But now you're saying, great, but what if I do want to run it for a different company or a different month, like you did with your forecast and budget? Well, right here, all of this, same concept, is based on parameters. So your user goes in and says, hey, I want to see corporate Asia instead, and I want to see the next month, clicks a button, okay? And based on this, it now gives you corporate Asia for the month of November. Looking at this, great, provides top line, but maybe right underneath, you actually want to see a dashboard, a chart of your data. Here gives you product sales, service sales. Needless to say, you'll be able to customize. And the point here is you click, and you see, hey, 29% of the revenue came from the fourth quarter, right? And yeah, there are a lot of tools that do this, tools that are more advanced than we are, definitely. In my experience, most mid-sized companies find that our tools are more than enough. And the point is, yes, you can drill in multiple times. A lot of these BI visualization tools, they'll show you an outlier, like this, you see your customer receivables, but the conversation sort of ends there. With BI 360, you see an outlier, but now you can go down and actually view a formatted report where you can go, click, and if you wanted to, you can actually pull up the invoice directly. So the point is, everything is happening within one platform. And notice how for this entire presentation, from the person that's viewing all of this stuff, I really haven't left any of this. This is sort of where I'll leave it off at too. We have about 14 various verticals. So this was general. We have verticals specific for industries, and creating your own templates is all done in our Excel add-in, but you create them once, and then you're able to reuse it over and over. And that's our software. What we looked at today, again, just to kind of recap, and I'll take any of the questions for the remaining few minutes. We took a look at really, like I said, right here, the BI 360 module. We fit within the CPM landscape. These tools right here are the dashboards. We do some of it, so there is overlap with ours. For most mid-sized companies, our dashboards are more than enough. If not, we have an integration with PowerBi.com. You could put it directly on top of it. Hopefully I illustrated how easy to use this is for an end user. And in the product demo, we went through how all of this stuff is linked together in one platform. So here's my contact information. And what I'll do now is read off a few of the questions.
Yes, thanks so much, Alex. We really appreciate it. As everybody can see, this is just truly a powerful tool. But for those that live and breathe in Excel, boy, this is right in your wheelhouse. It really makes it simple to use.
And reading off a few of the questions here, one is, and we only have time for probably two of those. This is all great, but can you scale into, can you add these solutions? Yeah, with our suite, again, we kind of focus, on the structured side of it, and you can absolutely, if I go back in here, grow into this, which effectively is, you can start by just replacing MR, very simple, and then you can add, the rest of these modules and users.
That's a great question. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt there, Alex. Go ahead.
No, I'll just do one more, and then I'll kick it back to you. Craig, the second question here is around pricing. How is this priced? It's, what it is, because you can do it in phases, it's really priced based on modules, which modules you want to purchase, and then which users. And yeah, we probably don't have time to discuss the pricing in detail on this call, but if really you're interested in this, reach out to me and Craig, and we'll follow up and do probably a more detailed demonstration, as well as provide you specific pricing for both software and implementation. So Craig, sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to thank everyone for the time today. Very ambitious. I kind of tried to tackle all of analytics and show you specifically where we fit in the space, and hopefully just got you excited. And like I said, data is becoming more important than ever, with the amount increasing year over year significantly. And we capture a small subset of that, and very good place to start, and then furthermore develop your analytical strategy as you go along. So Craig, thank you so much, and I'll kick it back over to you.
Great, appreciate it so much, Alex. Great job on this. And yeah, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. If you have follow-up questions, or again, if you want to talk about pricing, because it is such a scalable platform, it's one size doesn't fit all. So we'd be happy to have that conversation with you. Just reach out to either Holly or myself, and we can have that conversation with you. But with that, thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and thanks again for participating. Take care.